Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Nzuri Books. My name is Desiree Crooks, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you our new up-and-coming author, Dela Dorkenoo. Now, this is his book, 166 Days of Excellence. Dela is a community organizer, writer, and is currently pursuing journalism, which complements his love for research and truth-seeking. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your platform.
Beautiful. So before we even get started, first of all, I'd like to tell everyone, subscribe to this channel. Make sure to click on the bell so when a new video is uploaded, you'll be notified right away. So let's get to it. In your own words, Dela, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Dela. I'm 30 years old. I've been a community activist since 2015 after the Freddie Gray riots down in Baltimore. That's really sparked my interest to become more involved in my community. So I've organized events like African Liberation Day and Pan-African Women's Day. I chose to get into journalism, Bachelor of Journalism at Humber, because I really love to do research on my own. I do a lot of self-study, and I really love getting down to finding the full story, getting both sides of the story, three sides of the story, and just getting down to the truth. I'm also a martial artist. I have a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I also do kickboxing as well, so I could keep the mind-body connection strong.
So you got a lot going on. Pretty good, pretty good.
For sure, for
Well,
sure.
why did you choose this particular title, 166 Days of Excellence?
Well, I chose 166 Days of Excellence because this book is like a calendar, and 166 days was the number that I was able to collect. So there is 166 days, specific dates, calendar dates that I collected in this body of research. Now, there's a lot more days, but they haven't been recorded to a specific date. So we'll have some events or even some people who just have like the year, and you'll have some events or people who just have the month and the year, but it doesn't have the actual date on it. So I called it 166 days because that's the amount of days I was able to gather for the calendar year. And I just wanted to create a teaching tool to help keep that consciousness year round.
So, I mean, I've read the book and yeah, it is really, really good, very informative. I
Thank you.
myself would definitely use something like this, and it would be great, you know, for parents in school, with children in school, or even for themselves. It is a really good book. So, are we going to see a part two to this book?
Definitely, we'll definitely see a part two to this book. Well, it won't be a part two, it'll be more of a second edition. It will be more than 166 days for sure. But just through my continued study is just going to continue to gradually grow. So the second edition, we can expect it, I would say, late 2021 or early 2022. And I also plan on writing a numbers book for children. And this numbers book will be like an introduction to numbers, but also be an introduction to financial literacy as well, because I think that is very important for children to have.
So, everyone, make sure you look out for that. So, my next question is to you is, Bella, how long did it take you to get the research, do the research on this book?
It's an interesting question. Like I don't have a exact like number that I could give you, but it started in 2017. And this is basically what you have is like the third version or the final version, but it started off as I created the Afrocentric calendar in 2017. So I started this early 2017 and I finished around the summertime. So this was the first version. It was actually a ebook, so it wasn't even a physical copy, but it was called the Afrocentric calendar. So I that was the first version. So in summer 2017, and then I decided to revamp it in um, early 2019, like February, early February, and then I finished it by African Liberation Day on May 25th. And this was the second version before I got the publishing deal. So it was said 100. It says 152 days of excellence. It looks a little bit different, but this was basically the revamped version after I signed the publishing deal, and then after I connected with you, and the rest is history with 166 days of excellence. So like I could like estimate it took several months to get like all the information since 2017, but it's been an evolutionary process since 2017 with me just learning as a master's student and continuing to add on to this body of work.
So, did you find it a challenge with gathering the information? Because I know sometimes when you go online or you may go to different resources, you may get different information. Did you find that to be
Mhm.
a challenge, or were a lot of the information you were receiving, were they all basically very similar?
It was all basically very similar. Like um, some days were a bit challenging, so that's why I had this system of checking at least 4 or 5 sources, and then basically I would use the consensus between those 4 or 5 sources. And if I got to a point where I would have like, I don't think I got to this point actually where I had 3 different citations, but there was some challenges like with unifying some of the knowledge, but how I did it was I got the most sources for all the information that's in the book. So it was definitely challenging as like an independent researcher. Like I did all the research for myself. I spent all the time and everything. I at first I wrote everything down and then I typed it onto the computer and then I've checked it, rechecked it multiple times since then. But it definitely was a challenge. But I see the work that past master teachers have done to put this information together. So it was definitely a very good process for me in terms of becoming an educator, independent researcher that wants to teach other people. Because ultimately, we have to get the accurate information out there, the best information.
Absolutely. Now, I've noticed in your book that you had dedication to Elder Owusu Young.
Hmm.
I mean, why this person, and he one of the individuals that inspired you to write this book? And if not, who inspired you, or were there people who inspired you to write this book?
Well, he was part. He was part of like the process, I guess you could say, because um he was part of the first group that I joined. I'm a part of a few groups right now, but he was part of the first group that I joined, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and he was one of the elders in the group, and he was a writer himself. He done lots of writing, um, just like on his thoughts on Pan Africanism. He traveled a lot back in his day and everything. But I basically met him later on in his life when his health wasn't the greatest. I would used to visit him in the hospital, and we would just talk about Pan Africanism, the state of what's going on in Toronto. You know, he told me about the travels that he done back in the day, and I'll tell him like what the youth is into in Toronto today. But ultimately, what really inspired this was African Liberation Day, celebrated on May 25th. So African Liberation Day is one of our key days that the All African People Revolutionary Party celebrates on May 25th. The first African Liberation Day was in 1958. No, sorry, 1963, which was originated from Africa Freedom Day, April 15, 1958. And um, from African Liberation Day, after the Freddie Gray riots, I went to the African Liberation Day event and I loved it. I loved the energy. I loved the Pan-Africanism, people getting together. I loved the vendors getting together and everything. And then from there, I decided to join. So that's what really got me involved in the AAPRP, was through African Liberation Day. But from then, because I joined back in 2015, like the years would go by and then I would see that, there's a couple of other days as well. Like Malcolm X Day is May 19th. So it's just before African Liberation Day on May 25th, right? So from there, I just sort of collected other days as well, pertaining to like the same theme of revolution, liberation, um, achievements that we've done. I really wanted to keep it more on the achievements that we've done and less about the bad stuff that happened to our peoples, just to really to highlight the achievements that we've pretty much done all over the world, really. So like from African Liberation Day, it just grew. It just pretty much grew. But Elder Owusu, I dedicated a book to him because he never published any works himself. So I wanted to immortalize him through my works. And that's what I'm going to continue to do as I write more books. So that was my way of immortalizing Elder Owusu as a writer through my works ultimately, and just to show the passing of the baton from the elder to the younger generation.
Nice, nice. Now, you've mentioned a lot about Freddie Gray riots. For those of our viewing audience who are unfamiliar with this event, can you elaborate a little bit?
So Freddie Gray, it happened in March. And basically Freddie Gray, he was a victim of police brutality. And what had happened was, as he was getting arrested, he was beaten up pretty severely. And then after he was beaten up, there was some footage. He couldn't even walk. So he was basically dragged into the police van, and he sustained more injuries, and basically he died from his injuries. And what the police had said was it was a rough ride in the police van. um even they said that even with the footage prior to him screaming out in pain, that's what I really remember, is watching that video over and over again, because he was screaming out in so much pain. And very much like Emmett Till, I could see myself in Freddie Gray. So that's what really stuck with me, and that's what really told me that I really need to do something other than you know for me, I felt like being on social media wasn't enough. Talking about it on social media wasn't enough. I had to at least get with other like-minded people and see what I could do for Toronto, because the police brutality, it's really everywhere. So I felt very passionate about it, and since then I decided to jump headfirst into community activism, and I haven't looked back since.
Good for you. Good for you. Now, you stated in Nzuri Books website, on Nzuri Books website, knowledge isn't power anymore. Knowledge applied is power. Elaborate a little bit more on that.
So basically, I say that as a paradigm shift to the new generation, or what the new generation has to do, because we have to take knowledge is power. I feel like we have to evolve that into something greater. So many of our master teachers, they did the work. Many of the master teachers like Dr. Ben, Dr. John Henry Clark, Cheikh Anta Diop, Walter Rodney, Chancellor Williams, they recorded all the history um, that we really needed. And through their service, they were able to record the history so then it wouldn't be rewritten by the Eurocentric school system. So they did their part in making sure that we had the correct information going all the way back into the Nile Valley civilization in Kemet, now called Egypt. But now, as me being a young person myself, I feel like just having the knowledge is just not enough anymore. We need to take that knowledge and apply it and translate that knowledge into infrastructure so we could pass down to the next generation. Because ultimately, what we're doing is we're picking up the work that was left behind for us, and we have to leave something greater. So when I say knowledge applied is power, it's a evolution, it's a paradigm shift to do greater than what has been done in the past, actually, because we have all the knowledge of the kingdoms and everything. We have all the knowledge of what we've done and our achievements. Even being oppressed, while being oppressed, we're able to achieve some of the greatest feats that the world has seen. But I feel like now we know all of that. So how do we translate that into the 21st century and build the infrastructure so we pass it down to the next generation?
So why is Pan-Africanism important in Afrocentric education?
Well, Pan-Africanism is important because it's a very key piece in history, I feel like, because after the fall of the Nile Valley civilization, we did have kingdoms come up several times. So kingdoms like the Ghana Empire, the Shanghai Empire, and the latest one like the Mali Empire, that was the 17th century. And then there was kind of this period where we just continue to be attacked and oppressed. And then we get into the Conference of Berlin in 1884. And it was 1884 and 1885. So it was a conference for 2 years. And basically, in this conference, European countries sat together at the table, decided to stop fighting amongst themselves and draw lines and take the resources from African people and the African land. So Pan-Africanism really is our greatest attempt to politically and economically organize ourselves as a nation, because the problems that we're going through today is because we don't have a nation to back us up. We don't have that economic powerhouse, that the political powerhouse to speak for the children of the diaspora. So that's why Pan-Africanism is important, because it sparks the organization that we need to get together as a people on the continent so we can control the land and the resources. Because Europe built their countries, the West built itself up through the exploitation of African labor and the resources. So Pan-Africanism is really it was the first. It was a way for us to politically and economically get ourselves together. In a sense, it was a response to the Conference of Berlin, even though it wasn't like a conscious response to the Conference of Berlin. We had the Conference of Berlin, then we have the counteraction to that, which is Pan-Africanism. So we really need to get back to that state of politically and economically, socio-economically, getting our land and resources together so it benefits everybody. It's going to help the continent. It's going to help the natives on the continent, but it's gonna affect the rest of the world in turn.
I have to say that, first of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you. As a young warrior, a young educated Black man or African man, or what's the other word? I cannot remember the other name right now, so I'm going to stick with Africa, even though I know that's not the correct name. But you're doing great things, and there are a lot of you out there who are gathering the knowledge, and they're doing a lot for their community, for their people, and we need this. But just to stand up and fight for what you believe in, and not necessarily with fists, but with knowledge and with words. And you guys are doing a great job. You make me proud. You young people make me very, very proud. So my next question to you is, what advice would you give to a young up-and-coming author?
Well, I would say I would give two pieces of advice. The first one is more on the business side, and that would be to set up your e-commerce. I would say that it would be one of the number one things to do, because it's great to sell locally for sure, but there's people all around the world who are ready to support you. You just have to be able to market to them. So thinking globally, first and foremost, I would say through e-commerce, even with what's going on with the pandemic and everything. um, the landscape is changing, so we have to be able to adapt to that landscape the best way possible. And then the second piece of advice I would give on the literary side would be to always keep writing. Always just keep on writing all the time, because um, writers, we have the privilege of immortalizing ourselves through our published works. So we don't know the impact the words that we write tomorrow. We don't know what impact the words that we wrote yesterday will have tomorrow. So I think just keep writing is the main thing. Keep writing, because our works, our thoughts, our ideas, our stories are going to last a lifetime. So definitely keep writing, because we don't know the impact the words we wrote yesterday will have tomorrow.
Very, very, very true. Um, Everyone watching this video, buy his book, 166 Days of Excellence. It is a really good read. And you can purchase this book on my website at Nzuri Books, www.nzuribooks.com, and you will see it at the bottom. And definitely, like I said, go on the site, check it out, post your comments. $19.99. So it's a really good buy. And we look forward to your other books coming, Dela. It's been a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. So again, subscribe to this channel. Click on the bell. That way, when a new video becomes available, you'll be notified right away. Give me a thumbs up. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on all my social medias, Twitter, Instagram. Dela, is there anything else you would like to add? This has been really good. Anything else you want to say? Oh, I have a question for you. Before you say anything, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Where can people tune in to? Do you teach online? Do you do anything online where people can tune in and hear you, whether through visually seeing you or podcast, anything? Because brother, you got a lot to say, and I've heard some of your history classes, and you know what you're talking about. You're good. So the floor is yours.
Well, I'm on Instagram, blackdollars.ca, and I'm also on YouTube, blackdollars.ca as well. So you could find me on Instagram and YouTube, blackdollars.ca, the same on both.
Great. I will definitely be interviewing again, and Dela will actually be on. We'll be doing some videos on Nzuri Books YouTube, so you will be seeing him again. And then when you click on the website at www.nzuribooks.com, you're going to see more information about this young, brilliant author. I see great things for you in the future, and keep doing what you're doing. Family, peace and love and gratitude. Until next time.